It was a late Friday evening when my parents left for a weekend getaway, leaving me home alone for the first time in years. I was 16, responsible enough, or so I thought. My older brother had already moved out for college, and the house seemed quieter than usual, but I wasn't worried until that night. I had settled in to watch a movie, the comforting hum of the TV filling the empty spaces of the house. It was around 10:30 p.m. when the first unsettling sound broke the calm. A faint creak from upstairs, as if someone had stepped on the floorboard in the hallway. I froze. My heart raced. It wasn't unusual for the house to settle, but this sound was different. It was a deliberate step, heavy and slow. I shook it off, trying to convince myself it was just the house making noise. But then came a knock at the front door, soft, almost hesitant. My stomach dropped. Who could it be at this hour? I peered through the peephole, but no one was there. Confused, I backed away, assuming it was just someone playing a prank. As I turned to walk back into the living room, my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. "Everything okay?" I replied quickly, "Yeah, just weird noises. Nothing to worry about." But then my phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. "You're not alone." My blood ran cold. I stared at the message, my mind racing. I thought about calling the police, but what could I say? There was no sign of forced entry, and the house seemed undisturbed. I couldn't explain it, but something felt horribly off. I stood up, my legs trembling, and decided to check the doors and windows one more time. They were locked, but the uneasy feeling gnawed at me. Then I heard it, a scraping sound from the basement. It wasn't loud, but it was distinct. Without thinking, I grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, my hands shaking as I approached the basement door. I told myself it was just a rat, but I knew in my gut that it wasn't. The door was closed, but the scrape continued. Someone was downstairs. I called 911, whispering into the phone. "Someone's in my house. I'm alone. Please hurry." The operator told me to stay on the line and to remain calm. She promised help was on the way. I backed away from the door, my breath quickening. Then, without warning, the door creaked open. Slowly. A shadow flickered at the edge of my vision. Someone was standing in the doorway. I didn't know what to do. My mind raced. Should I run? Should I hide? I decided to bolt for the front door. But just as I reached for the handle, I heard footsteps behind me. I whipped around, the knife still clutched in my trembling hand, but the hallway was empty. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears as I stepped back into the living room, trying to make myself as small as possible. The footsteps seemed to follow me, growing closer with each passing second. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo, a picture of me taken from outside the house. The photo was blurry, but it was unmistakable. It was me, sitting on the couch, looking at my phone. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't stay here. I grabbed my keys and ran out the back door, my breath ragged in my chest. I ran to the neighbor's house, pounding on their door, desperate for help. The police arrived within minutes, and they cleared the house. They found no one inside. But there were signs of forced entry, scratches on the basement window, and a set of muddy footprints leading from the back door to the front. They told me the intruder had likely been watching me for some time, waiting for the perfect moment. It wasn't until the next morning, when I was sitting on the couch, trying to process what happened, that I noticed something chilling. The knife I had been holding the entire time. It was missing, and there, in the dim light of the living room, I could swear I saw fresh scratches on the door frame. Someone had been inside. That was the last time I ever stayed home alone. It was just supposed to be a regular night at home alone. I was 19, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood with my family. My parents had gone out for a few days, and I had the house all to myself. I was used to being alone, and at first, the silence felt comforting, even peaceful. I spent the evening watching TV, scrolling through my phone, and enjoying the rare solitude. Around midnight, I decided to make a snack in the kitchen. As I walked into the hallway leading to the kitchen, I felt an odd chill in the air. The house was always cold at night, but this felt different, uncomfortably cold, almost as if the air had shifted. I shrugged it off, thinking nothing of it. But as I walked into the kitchen, I heard it. A faint scraping sound coming from upstairs near my bedroom. At first, I thought it might just be the house settling, but it was so deliberate, so consistent. The sound stopped and started again, like someone was dragging something heavy across the floor. My heart began to race, and I felt an uneasy knot form in my stomach. I tried to convince myself it was just the wind or another old house noise, but my instincts told me otherwise. I decided to check it out. As I ascended the stairs, I held my breath, straining to hear any other sounds. The scraping noise was louder now, almost as if it were directly above me. When I reached the top of the stairs, I froze. The hallway was completely still, but the noise had stopped. My bedroom door was closed, and the bathroom light was on, casting an eerie glow under the door frame. I knocked softly on my parents' bedroom door. No response. I thought about calling them, but I didn't want to worry them unnecessarily. So I walked back to my room, trying to push the feeling of dread aside. But then, as I entered my room, I noticed something off. My window, which I was sure had been closed when I left earlier, was slightly ajar. The curtain was fluttering as if someone had been standing there watching. I slammed the window shut, my nerves on edge, but then I heard it again, the scraping noise. This time, it was coming from my closet. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced through all the possible scenarios. Was someone in the house? I wasn't sure, but I felt like I wasn't alone. I grabbed my phone, silently stepping toward the closet. The scraping had stopped, but I could hear faint breathing, shallow and uneven. I pressed my back to the wall and raised the phone, ready to call the police. But the second I started dialing, the breathing grew louder, closer. I turned quickly, only to see the closet door slowly creak open. I wish I could say I was brave. I wish I could say I ran to safety, but I didn't. I froze. My mind raced as a tall, shadowy figure emerged from the darkened closet, its face obscured by a mask. It was a man, tall and thin, with long, bony fingers that reached out toward me. I screamed, but it felt like the sound was swallowed by the house. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away, bumping into my dresser. The figure advanced toward me, his movements unnaturally slow, as if he was savoring my fear. In a blind panic, I dashed toward the door, but just as I was about to grab the handle, I heard him whisper, "Don't go. I've been waiting for you." I froze. I had to leave, but my feet wouldn't move. I could hear him coming closer, the sound of his breath rasping in the quiet room. With every ounce of strength, I opened the door and bolted down the hallway. My heart felt like it was going to explode as I ran to the front door. But before I could reach it, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps behind me, gaining on me. I couldn't open the door fast enough. My hands were trembling as I fumbled with the lock, but I finally managed to yank it open. I dashed outside, panting for breath. I ran to the neighbor's house, pounding on the door, desperate for someone to let me in. The police arrived within minutes, but by the time they searched the house, there was no sign of anyone inside. My bedroom window had been left open, and there were muddy footprints in the hallway, leading from the closet to the stairs. They told me someone had definitely been in the house. The intruder had likely been watching me for hours before making his move. He had been in the house for who knows how long, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. After that night, I moved in with my aunt. I couldn't bring myself to stay in the house any longer. The police were never able to track down the intruder. They said he was likely someone who had been watching my house for a while, knowing I would be alone. The most chilling part. A few weeks after I moved out, I found out that another family in the same neighborhood had been targeted in a similar way, an intruder who waited until they were home alone to make his move. That was the last time I ever stayed home alone, and the last time I felt truly safe in my own home. It was a rainy autumn evening when I found myself home alone for the first time in months. My parents had gone to visit relatives, and my older sister was at a sleepover, leaving me in the house by myself. The weather outside was bleak, with the wind howling and heavy rain pattering against the windows. I usually loved the peace and quiet, but that night there was something unsettling about the stillness of the house. It started innocently enough. I decided to watch a movie in the living room, surrounded by the warm glow of the fireplace. But after a while, I began to feel watched. I chalked it up to the isolation and the creepy shadows cast by the flickering firelight. But the feeling didn't go away. It only grew stronger. I couldn't shake the sensation that someone, or something, was observing me from somewhere in the house. The house wasn't large, but it was old. The floorboards creaked with every step, and the old pipes groaned as if the house itself was sighing. I didn't mind the sounds at first, but the longer I sat there, the more they began to irritate me. Every creak seemed louder, every groan more ominous. It felt like the house itself was alive, breathing, and it was starting to suffocate me. Around 11 p.m., I went to the kitchen to grab a snack. As I walked down the dark hallway leading to the kitchen, I heard a faint whisper from somewhere behind me. I froze, my heart racing. I turned around, expecting to see someone standing there, but the hallway was empty. Nothing. I told myself it was just the wind. It had to be. I didn't feel like staying in the kitchen any longer, so I hurried back to the living room, trying to dismiss the strange feeling. I sat back down, attempting to refocus on the movie, but the whispering continued, this time louder, almost like a chant. It seemed to be coming from upstairs, from my bedroom. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the house settling again. But then, the whispers grew more distinct, more menacing. It wasn't just one voice. It was many, overlapping, a chorus of murmurs filling the house. They were saying things I couldn't understand, words in a language I didn't recognize. I grabbed my phone and called my sister, but there was no answer. I dialed my parents' number, but the call went straight to voicemail. Panic began to set in. What was happening? I couldn't sit there any longer, so I decided to investigate. I cautiously ascended the stairs, my breath shallow, my legs heavy with dread. The moment I reached the top, the whispers stopped, and an eerie silence fell over the house. My bedroom door was slightly ajar, and the air in the hallway felt colder. The house's temperature seemed to drop rapidly, as if something unnatural had entered. I pushed the door open, and what I saw inside made my blood run cold. My bedroom was in complete disarray. The bed was overturned, clothes scattered across the floor. But that wasn't the worst part. The walls were covered in strange symbols, drawn hastily in what looked like black chalk. The floor was stained with something dark and sticky, like dried blood. And in the middle of the room, on the floor, was a strange object, an old, cracked mirror, reflecting only darkness. I stepped back, heart pounding in my chest. I was too scared to breathe, let alone move. The whispers returned, louder than ever, echoing through the house. But this time, they weren't just whispers. They were full voices, laughing, crying, chanting. I could hear my name being called from all around me. I ran back downstairs, my mind racing with fear. I grabbed the phone again, but this time, I saw something on the screen that made my stomach drop. A message from my sister. "Don't go upstairs. He's there." I was paralyzed with fear. Who was she talking about? Who was he? I didn't know, but it didn't matter. I had to get out of the house. I grabbed my jacket and ran to the front door, but when I tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. The door was locked, and the handle wouldn't turn. I yanked on it, but it was as if something or someone was holding it closed from the outside. That's when I heard it, the sound of heavy breathing, slow and deliberate, coming from behind me. I didn't dare turn around. I stood there, frozen, feeling the weight of an unseen presence in the room with me. The air grew thick, suffocating. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape, but I couldn't move. Suddenly, the lights flickered, then went out entirely, plunging the house into pitch darkness. The sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway, coming closer, heavier with each step. I reached for the phone again, but it was gone. It wasn't in my pocket. My heart was pounding in my ears. I spun around, trying to orient myself in the dark, but then I felt something, cold fingers brushing my arm. I screamed and shoved whatever it was away, but the pressure on my arm didn't release. I stumbled backwards, finally managing to get a glimpse of something. An outline in the dark, a figure standing in the doorway, its features hidden in shadow. The smell of decay filled the air. "Leave," the figure whispered, its voice raspy and unnatural. "Leave before it's too late." I didn't need to be told twice. I ran to the back door and threw it open, not even bothering to close it behind me. I ran through the rain, my heart still racing, the sound of footsteps following me, growing louder and louder. I didn't stop running until I reached the neighbor's house. They let me in, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still following me, watching me from the darkness of the street. The next day, when I went back to the house with my parents, everything was normal. There were no strange symbols, no bloodstains, no cracked mirror. It was as if nothing had happened. But I know what I saw. I know what was there. And I'll never forget the terror I felt that night. The house was never the same after that. The strange occurrences stopped, but the memory of what happened, what I experienced, still haunts me to this day. Sometimes, when I walk past that old house, I swear I can hear whispers on the wind,